Go for a minute.
Hey guys, it's me again. I told you I would share my journey to the truth, and so I'm about to share something with you all that I haven't talked about in years. I've shared bits and pieces of it, and I'm now 48 years old, and I've never shared this with you before. So I'll go back to the part of my journey when I was a 15-year-old girl. A lot of people know I had a baby at 15 and 19 years of age. And so when I got pregnant when I was 15, it was like my life just kind of shut down. It was like I had this life. I was most popular in junior high, and I was head cheerleader, and then all of a sudden, bam, I get pregnant. First time I was a virgin, started having sex, and then I ended up getting pregnant. And so it was a very, very hard time in my life, and no one knew for the longest time because I hid my pregnancy because I was so tiny. I could hide it, and I would wear big sweaters, but in the inside, I was like this little 15-year-old girl on the outside, vibrant with life, but on the inside, I was slowly dying a slow death. And that's how the enemy wanted to take me out even back then. And you have to understand, back in 1985, having a baby was not all that popular like it is today. It's like the norm today, but back then it was not. And I just didn't know what I was going to do. I just stayed in silence. And I don't even know why I want to tell this, but I remember we used to have house parties back in the day. And I remember I went to this house party, and these people weren't even really my friends for the most part, but I remember sitting at a table, and we could get alcohol. I mean, that's all we had to do. When you live in a small town, that's all you do is drink and party and go to school. And I remember sitting at this table one night just alone and I'm going to try not to cry in this because sometimes I can really go back and tap into that little girl sitting at this table drinking a bottle of Mad Dog at 15 years old, drinking one bottle of Mad Dog. And I can remember I was so sick, and I went out, threw up, came back, drank another bottle of Mad Dog. And I just sat, and really nobody really talked to me, but I was just sitting in my misery, just thinking, not even knowing what was going to happen, what I was going to do. And there was this guy, because when I say I was drunk, I was so drunk, but his name was Chris Lewis. And I remember he walked me home. And sometimes you don't know how God really protects you, because I mean, like I said, none of my friends were at this party. And so I remember Chris walked me home, and he had to go in the opposite direction, but he still walked me home. And see, that's how God will use people. Even back then, even when you don't understand, how God will truly protect you. Even when you're not even thinking about him, he will still keep you safe. So if anybody sees Chris, I want you to thank him for me, because some of these, I didn't have a chance to thank the people, because you just come back and you live life. And so once my mom found out I was pregnant, or we talked about it, and all she said to me, she didn't tell me how wrong I was and what I did was so wrong. She just said, okay, we'll take care of it. And that's what we did. And so back then, AFDC wouldn't pay for the hospital, so I had to go away to have my son. And I went to this, a girls' home. And this home was girls that they were in the system. They had social workers because they literally were in the system. I just had a social worker because I was just this little girl whose mom couldn't afford to pay the hospital bill. And it was like 6 hours away from my mom. And I remember the day she dropped me off. And now I can understand, now that I'm a parent, I can understand her pain that day. And I remember I said to myself, I'm going to be a big girl today. I'm not going to cry because I don't want my mom to feel bad, and I'm not going to cry. And for anybody who used to know my mom, you can never tell, you could count on one hand how many times you really saw her cry. And I said, I'm going to be a big girl today. And I looked up at my mom, and tears were just streaming down her face. And I looked at her, and I was so stunned. I was like, oh my gosh. And now I literally understand the pain she felt that day, leaving her 15-year-old daughter 6 hours away in this place with a bunch of strangers. And so I was like, okay. And so she left me, and this home, they tried to make it as much as normal as possible, but like literally it was not. But you had to work your way on levels, and so I remember just laying in my bed, just like a little girl, just crying and thinking, oh my gosh, how did I get to this place? And then I'm realizing all these girls, they're like in the system because they've done bad things, and they're just not all that, some of them are not all that, they're not great people. And so I realized that if I didn't change the way that I changed my character. Instead of changing the atmosphere, I allowed that atmosphere to change me. And so I knew that if these girls detected any bit of fear, they would have pounced on me. So I immediately changed my attitude and I started developing this character that wasn't even me, but it was only to just protect myself, to keep me from going through anything that I didn't need to go through. And so some of the girls at the home, they were pregnant, some of them weren't. And like I said, they tried to make it as normal as possible, but for me, it wasn't, because I just would die inside every day. And I got to the point I wouldn't go anywhere, because you have to understand the place was, I'm not going to name it, but they used to call us Flo's Hoes. And I was like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't act like this was normal life for me, because it wasn't. There was nothing normal that I felt like a 15-year-old should have to go through, but I knew I got myself in that situation, so I knew I just had to endure. And so I would be as strong as I could until I would talk to my social worker and to my mom. And I would go in this office and I would just be crying and crying. I mean, like heaving. And my mom was just like, now I know what she felt like to hear her daughter crying like that, and knowing that there was nothing that she could do. But if it were not for my social worker, I had like the best social worker ever. One day I was like crying so loud, she just yelled at me and was like, Maletta, do you want your mom to put her house up to pay for your bill? And I said no. And she told me one day, this is the day she told me, well, suck it up and get over it and just tough it out. And that's what I did, the best way I knew how to tough it out. And I really wasn't there that long, but long enough for me. And so I want to go back to before I left. My friends, they had a baby shower for me. There were people who literally cared about me at that time, and we never talked about it. And I don't want to get into naming names, but I was 15. There's some people I remember that were there. And I remember that people would send me letters and they would send me cards. And it's like I disappeared for like 3 months. And then I came back and I acted like I was normal. And I never gave those people the right to know what I actually went through, because I just came back and just acted like things were normal. Nobody questioned me, because they knew not to question me, because I probably would have gone off on them because I wasn't ready to talk about it. So I know I'm kind of going back and forth, but I want to address those people. You know who you were. You're the ones that know that you were at my really baby shower / going away party. And for those of you that wrote me letters, those that you sent cards to me, I really thank you. And part of this is dedicated to you, because now you get to know. And even though it's 33 years later, now you get to know. And now I can share with you, because now I'm ready. And so I'm going back to the home. And so I remember the day I was in so much pain. And I was like, oh my gosh, what is this? And then I realized I was having contractions. And I remember the lady, she drove me to the hospital. And I just remember sitting there not shedding one tear. Not one tear. And I remember all of a sudden, all these doctors started gathering around my bed. And I'm like, what the world is going on? And then I realized they found out that my baby's cord got wrapped around his neck. And I ended up having a C-section, and I lost so much blood. And I remember I couldn't see my baby because I had a fever. And I was just like, you can't keep my baby from me. My baby was the only friend I had. My mom wasn't with me. And I knew I still had to, once again, I had to be a big girl because I've got to get through this. And so I remember having a temperature of like 103 degrees. And I was like, and like I said, they wouldn't let me see my baby. And so I knew I had to get this fever, and I would get up and I would walk and I would walk until that fever went down so I could see him. And I was in the hospital for like, I don't know, 5 days at the time. Back then when you had C-sections, they kept you in the hospital forever. And plus I was very, very sick. And so, and they wanted me to come back to the home like 2 weeks, just come back for 2 weeks. I was not going to take my baby there. So my mom and my sister came to get me, and I went home. But when I went back home, I just acted like everything was normal. I never talked about it. I never did anything. I just went back to school and acted like things were normal. And so I was just, by this time, I guess I was 15, 16, and I remember, but I still went to the prom. I still got to go to the prom, I remember. And there's like a few guys I want to thank, and another one is Chris Lewis, because he was one of my first prom dates, and he doesn't know what he did for me, because I was just so torn up. But when he asked me to go to the prom, I mean, I was so touched, and he never once told me what he had to go through. People said a lot of things to him, but he never once said it. He never said anything to me. And I just found out a few years ago some things that people had said to him. He never said one word to me about it, but he took me to the prom, and he made me feel normal. And then the next person is, God, who did I go to the prom with? Boo Carter. He took me to the prom. And then Malcolm Beverly, I remember he took me to my senior prom, and Malcolm would come to the house and he would play with Ryan. And I really thank these guys. And there's one other guy, Dougie Manyweather. He was one of the only guys that really, in his own way, defended me. And I thank him for that. And I've actually thanked Dougie privately, but now I want to thank him publicly. He defended me in the only way he knew how. And so that was a little bit of normalcy for me. I did get to go to the prom, and it was very hard just being, I had so many things that I wanted to do, but I couldn't. And I had family to help me, but Ryan, let me stop calling him he. Ryan was still my responsibility. And so it would be like every day you're 15, 16 years old, and you're getting off the bus every day with this little boy waiting on you. And it's like he loved my mom. My mom was his granny, but he knew I was his mom. And it was like every day I would get off this bus and this boy would be waiting for me. And I am like, if he only knew. I'm like, I can't protect you. I'm just a kid myself. And I really never thought as myself as a little girl because I had to grow up so fast. But guys, the reality is I was a little girl with a baby. And it's like my whole life had the rug had just been pulled from under me, just out of a decision that I made, not blaming anybody else. It was a decision I made. And so I had to deal with the consequences. The consequences were not doing the things, not being in any sports, not being a cheerleader, none of that, because that was the thing. You just had to live life. I had to be a mother. And I would take him to school with me some days, and then he would ride the bus home with me, and it was like really, really hard, but I just did it. My friends knew Ryan's going with us. I would take him places with me. Please don't cuss around my child. Let's just be normal. And but I did graduate high school. And thanks to my mom, I was able to graduate high school. And that to me was a great thing. I didn't have to quit or do anything like that. And so I did get to graduate. And I'm sorry, this is like it's still so hard for me because you never know how it affects you. And then I went away to college. My mom kept Ryan, and then I got pregnant again with Dominique. And I didn't know what I was going to do. Well, I'll just be honest with you. My plan was to get an abortion. That was my plan. But Dominique's dad, every time we would make an appointment, he wouldn't have the money or whatever. But see, that's how God was protecting me, and he was protecting my child through his father. I was not able to get an abortion, but I remember I was like, okay, I can't get an abortion. I'm going to give him away for adoption. And I remember telling my mom, I was like, I'm giving him away. And my mom was like, you're not giving my grandchild away. And I remember just putting my head down because I was just thinking, okay, she's probably going to knock me out. But I was like, that's my child. You can't tell me what to do. But I am so thankful to my mother that she would not allow me to do, because I don't know what I would have done at that particular time. But that was my thing. I already had this 4-year-old. I couldn't deal with another one. But thanks be to God and my mother. Both of my children are grown men. And, you know, sometimes people look at me and they look at how calm I am now and how peaceful I am. And they look at my children and think about how what wonderful young men they are. But nobody knows the process that I went through. And that they even went through just having a younger mother. And so, you know, as a mother sometimes, or as a parent, let me just say, as a parent, you blame yourself because sometimes we make some of the most ridiculous decisions, but at that time is what we think is best for our children. But it's not always. But see, God is so merciful. He is so merciful that he keeps our children even when we make the dumbest mistakes. And so many years I would beat myself up for the dumb mistakes. If my kids had problems in school with Ryan, I would think, was it because I did all that drinking while he was in my belly? You know, and you blame yourself for all these things. And what happens is you become prisoner to your mistakes. And you live your life like that. And you don't even realize that there is a thing called deliverance and healing. And God has begun to just heal my heart. I did the best I could. I made what I thought were the best decisions. I did everything that I thought was best for them. And yeah, they're great now, but I'm sure they had to go through some things. But there's a consequence to everything you do, good or bad. And I paid those consequences. And I wasn't really ever suicidal. But I remember I used to bargain with God because I had these kids that loved me so much. And they both were mama's boys in their own little individual way. And I used to just wake up and say, God, if you just take me. Because I knew if I committed suicide, that was not going to be good. I was just like, but if you take me, then it'll be okay. Because I just couldn't take anymore. I was like, I just didn't know what to do with these kids that loved me so much, and I could never figure out why they loved me so much. And so where my deliverance is coming in is now that they're older, and I can see the type of men that they have become. Some of it was because of me, some of it I had nothing to do with, but it's helped me just know, well, maybe I didn't do so bad after all. And you know, I look at Ryan, he's married and has a little baby, and so now I'm a me. Now I have a grandson. Well, you wanted the truth, here's the truth. Now I have a grandson. I have a daughter-in-law. And that little baby, God uses all things, because all things work together for the good. And use that baby to help free me and to make me know that I didn't do such a bad job after all. Because my son is a wonderful husband and he is a wonderful father. And that's freeing to me. And then there's Dominique. That boy, he's not a boy, but he's my baby. He's had a hard time, but he has oh my gosh, he has just dug himself out of a ditch. And very successful. And people just love him. I mean, he's a coach. He's a coach at a college, or he's the assistant coach. Anyway, he's still a coach. He loves kids. And I mean, when you see his work ethic and how he works with the kids, I mean, that is freeing to me, because it does let me know that I didn't do so bad after all. And God, I still say God is so, He is so merciful. Ugh. I did not want to do this video today, but I knew I had to, because it's so deep and it's so personal to me. But I knew not only would I be helping others, I knew I would be helping myself, because this is my way to freedom, to no longer be bound by the things the enemy meant to destroy me once again. But I'm just thankful to God. I'm thankful to my friends. I'm thankful to my family that helped me raise these two kids. I'm thankful. So I'm just thanking people that I didn't get to thank then. I thank you now for loving me, for not judging me. I just thank you. And that's it. But this leads to my next video, because there's a scripture that says, forget about the former things. Behold, I will do a new thing. And it's about how, and it says, and it shall spring forth. Do you perceive it not? And this is how it leads into it, because see, sometimes we can't see the new thing God is doing because we're still holding on to the former thing. So now I can be free because I'm no longer holding on to the former thing, which was having a baby at 15 and 19, making bad choices, making good choices, doing things that I'm not proud of. But those were the things of the past. And so now I'm not going to miss God doing the new thing in my life because I'm so busy holding on to the former thing. So until next time, guys, I'll see you, and I'm going to show you how to let go of the former things.